We are standing at one of our many very successful community gardens on Sherwood Avenue here on the southwest side of Youngstown, Ohio, in the Idora neighborhood.
Okay. I gave Loretta and her friend.
Absolutely. Well, one of the ultimate benefits is increased access to healthy foods. As you're aware, most of these neighborhoods have lost, their grocery stores, so they've created what we call food deserts, which, there's no access to healthy vegetables within walking distance of any of our neighbors. So the first and foremost benefit of this is creation of healthy access to healthy foods, increasing, health within our neighborhoods. Most of these neighborhoods suffer from long-term chronic illnesses, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, etc. This increasing healthy food access will mitigate that problem, and long term we'll really start seeing the benefits. In addition to that, we're creating additional green space, passive green space, pocket parks, park space, which all of these things have been proven and researched by Wharton School of Business and others to increase market values in the neighborhood. So long term, we envision home values going up, market values going up, equity, individual homeowners putting more investment in their own homes, increasing the equity of our neighborhood. So this is not just a feel-good type of thing. This is creating long-term benefits for society economically and in terms of our overall health of our neighborhood.
We'll make pretty quick work of it if we all do it together. We got to put them in black plastic bags.
Yeah, they'll get it.
You do?
Yeah.
Ian Beniston, Assistant Director of the Youngstown Neighborhood Development Corporation.
All right, everybody. We want everybody
The Youngstown
to
Neighborhood
have all the
Development
t-shirts
Corporation
on.
is a citywide neighborhood development corporation that's currently working in 3 neighborhoods in the city. We're in the Idora neighborhood right now, which is located on the southwest side of Youngstown. We began working in this neighborhood about 3 years ago with the neighborhood planning process, which resulted in one of the first publicly adopted neighborhood plans to be completed after the Youngstown 2010 citywide plan was developed. That kind of catalyzed a whole lot of activity, first being the creation of a neighborhood group, the Idora Neighborhood Association, which currently is one of the largest, if not the largest and more vibrant neighborhood groups in the city. They have about 225 members. There's been hundreds of folks in this neighborhood involved in the activities. I think we've got about 75 folks involved in the garden. They have about another 50 or 60 people that meet monthly on community safety. So there's folks involved in a whole range of activities. And through that initial work and development of the neighborhood association, we realized we needed a vehicle to kind of implement some more sophisticated community development. So the Youngstown Neighborhood Development Corporation was developed. It was created in October of 2009 and has since quickly gained a lot of traction working in this neighborhood. We're using a whole range of strategies, including greening. Obviously, this is one of our community gardens. There's 4 community gardens in the neighborhood, and then there's one larger kind of demonstration site that's almost a whole block long when it's complete. We're also deploying some more passive green space strategies, so working with homeowners to create side yards, is creating some little parklets. We've got a unique project on the next block over where we're turning over 17 vacant lots to the Metropolitan Park District, who's expanding the Metro Parks out from its existing borders right about a block behind us. And then we have a whole range of other activities to include the acquisition and rehab of foreclosed housing, which we're rehabbing to energy efficiency standards, conducting home energy rating system audits, and maximizing the efficiency of those units. And then the homes that are beyond repair and not salvageable, we are deconstructing and demolishing through partnership with the city. So we're trying to use as much of the deconstructed goods as we can within the neighborhood. So a lot of the garden sites, if they don't have things from the deconstructed houses now, they will soon. We're building pavilions at each site with deconstructed timber. We're using bricks for the garden beds. We have concrete stairs that we're using at one site, kind of like a little, almost think of it like a little mini amphitheater.
Many cities, including Youngstown, Cleveland, Detroit, are recognizing that, hey, we're no longer going to have the population that we once had. We have infrastructures that were built for double the population. So, instead of, licking our wounds any further, what we're doing is we're realizing that, we can be smaller but stronger. We can be, leaner, greener, and smarter, and actually, be better than we were, 5-10 years ago. So I definitely think everyone is embracing that concept of right-sizing our environment, and I think finally, we're all kind of working together in collaboration and synergy to do that. So yeah, I believe this is a tipping point, project, neighborhood, and I think within the region, we're finally coming to grips with the right way, the smart way to rebuild and sustain our neighborhoods.
Probably delivered papers for the better part of 20 years in the neighborhood growing up, so kind of percolated down through the family, and eventually I inherited the street, and then you graduate and you start doing another street. And being 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and you get to see changes over time. The neighborhood was kind of on a slow, steady decline because it was a lot of the older people that were living here that had been here forever. And when they moved out, there wasn't an influx of, the community itself was dying with the whole industry, the steel industry and stuff, and there wasn't an influx of new people and new blood and stuff. So things just started to run down in general, became a lot less safe. I do remember being really little, and we never locked our doors, never locked our cars, anything. Keys stayed in the ignition. This was before I could drive, or I had more fun. But that changed after that. You had to lock. People were getting robbed, and it just, then this became the city with this reputation of being an unsafe place to live. So I went away for a bunch of years, lived in a lot of different towns, and kept real close tabs here, and it was easy because my parents were here still. Came back, and not much was different except on paper. They had that Youngstown 2010 plan, and you hear about it, and after a while, all these plans kind of start to sound like the same. So 2010 kind of sounded the same. Like, all right, everybody's got great ideas, but it's the town where we've been on this steady decline for a long time, and maybe it won't. But all of a sudden, these things popped into existence. We had heard about them, and it sounded like an interesting idea. But then all of a sudden, one day, they started trucking in hay bales and started trucking in the manure and stuff, and then within the space of a few hours, basically, they were built. And the following Saturday, we came out with, and we had probably 15 people out here just for hours planting. And then in a few weeks after that, people started harvesting. The first crop to come in was lettuce, and it was amazing how fast things changed and how fast people started feeling like old friends. I met a guy who lives right around the corner, and I never ever would have talked to him before. He was the nicest guy in the world, and who knew? But this thing brings people together. Yesterday we were walking around through the different gardens, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to be from Brentwood to be friendly. People from Parkview are just as friendly, even if you come from Brentwood now, because we're sharing this community thing. Alex here and his buddies are up here all the time. You see them around the street, and they wave to you now, and we wave to them, and we didn't. I'm sure I passed him 50 times on the street or 100 times on the street and never knew who he was, and it's pretty cool to be able to do that. I see Calvin all the time up and down on his bike, and he's got the best grin, and now I know who he is, and I know what he represents, so it's just a great thing. So.
Absolutely. I mean, we're already forming partnerships with our neighbors, including Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and one thing we want to do is create an urban laboratory here in Youngstown, where we're bringing in the finest urban thinkers across the country. We're all suffering from the same things, population loss, a preponderance of vacant land and vacant assets. So we think we can all work together to not only energize good thinking and be a thought leader, but also ways to affect policy in Washington, D.C., at the state level, to really show how a regional approach and understanding how post-industrial cities like Youngstown, how you have to look at the policies now and change them, quite frankly, to really be more proactive in today's economic time. So we're working with our neighbors to create, again, thought leadership as well as change policy to make it more conducive to cities like Youngstown, Cleveland, Detroit, Flint, and others.